Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first session of the Florida Bar Crash Course for the July 2022 bar exam. I always have to think about it. I've been doing so many of these crash courses that I forget, like, is it February? Is it 2019? I used to even do them live in person, so now it just seems very familiar to do it on Zoom, and all for the better. We're comfortable and we're in a positive mood for this exam. So first thing I'm going to do is read a review that I just got literally 37 minutes ago from Roberto. Ibis Prep is truly a great company. I just hired them to assist me with the Florida bar in February 2022, and surely enough, I passed with flying colors. Ibis Prep does something that Themis and Barbary does not offer, and that is personal tutoring. Andrew sits down with you and helps you analyze your strengths and weaknesses, and then he helps you by assigning more of his tutors who are strong in those fields to work alongside you to make you successful. Truly, if you have any doubts in your mind at all, hire Ibis Prep and they will assist you with whatever you need. So I just wanted to share that with everyone because I really do take pride in this company and what we offer. And everyone here in this crash course, you're with me, I'm trying to utilize my time the best. So I'm treating this like one-on-one tutoring with a group as much as possible. That's why I want to get to know you all, get a relationship with you. As far as what services we offer, supplemental to this, we do Florida bar tutoring. I would recommend getting one of these packages if you're watching this or you're feeling like you missed some classes or you want just some complimentary assistance during the week. Now, everyone in this class, I'm going to tell you exactly what you should be doing every single day. See, this is this group session. But I have a great team. I have Sam, I have Amani, I have Jeremy, I have Robert, all awesome people. They specialize in certain subjects too, like Amani for torts, definitely, Sam for wills, trusts, Jeremy for family law, Robert for civil procedure. Like, team is solid. Just know that. I'm not trying to push our packages on anyone right now. I'm just showing you how you can find us, what we offer, and if you're getting nervous or falling behind, one-on-one tutoring with us is a really, really great option. Anyway, we're going to start today by talking about contracts and how to write a really, really, really solid contracts essay. So does anyone out there have any feelings in general about contracts essays compared to other subjects?
I like them because I feel like when it's with contracts, obviously we're going to be arguing about a contract. So it's like, it's so repetitive and robotic. And those were my favorite essays to actually practice because it's just like, I know for sure the first half I'm going to get it. And there's always the certain same subjects, certain same issues that come up in every essay, but contracts, they're literally the same, especially when it comes to Florida. Mutual mistake, parole evidence, what else is it? The non-competes, like those things just come and they come and they come and they come, and it's the same thing. Like this past essay, this past Florida, I was so mad that we didn't have a full contracts essay. But even though I did catch an essay because they had like some agreement where they weren't supposed to, like, I don't know, I guess it was somebody gets hurt, like a liability waiver or something like that. And at first, when I did my essay, I didn't really talk about it. But when I went back, I was like, man, this is contract. So I went in, I did a little paragraph about offer acceptance, whatever. And then in the end, they did say that it was contracts on there. Like, contracts is easy to me when it comes to the essays.
So Sam, I love your energy this morning. I need that. Tell me what you know from the top about contracts. I know you had this memorized, or you had it memorized. How does a contract begin?
Offer. You want me to say everything?
From the top, where do we start?
Okay, a contract is an agreement between two or more parties that may have legal remedies at law. A contract can be governed by UCC or common law. UCC governs contracts for the sale of goods. Common law governs contracts for land, services, and everything else. The predominant. Yeah. You just end up memorizing it that way because it's like, that's the best way.
What's the predominant purpose test?
Predominant purpose test is when a contract has goods and services involved, and then you go ahead and which one is the predominant subject of the contract, and that will rule and govern the contract.
Okay, and what about the mirror image rule? What's that about?
The mirror image rule is with common law that the acceptance has to mirror the offer. And if it doesn't, then it becomes a rejection and a counter offer.
And what are special rules that apply to merchants when it comes to contracts?
I'm sorry, Benjamin has introduced. But we have battle of forms.
Yeah, what does the battle of the forms mean?
That means that if they're merchants and there is a non-material.
I think I'm losing you. All right, well.
I'm sorry, I had to mute because he was starting. It's nap time around this time. So they're so aggravated.
You're, it's all good. But amazing job, Sam. Did you see that? Does everyone feel confident that they can do what she just did? No, Grace, why not? Talk to me.
I just have trouble like memorizing. I need to do a outline first to be able to memorize it. And during the break, I did study from other subjects, and contracts was one that I didn't have time to study. So it's a good thing we're starting with that.
Okay, perfect. We're starting with contracts. Memorization is the key to this. I can't stress that enough. To be or not to be, that's a question. Whether there's noble in the mind to suffer slings and arrows or outrageous fortune and take arms against the sea of trouble by opposing them. We got to memorize this stuff cold. I can't stress that enough. So what Sam just memorized, and it's unfortunate. I wish that last time, Sam, you got a really awesome contracts essay. I know you would have knocked it out of the park, but I think contracts is very, very likely to be tested, and my students are going to be extremely prepared for contracts. So we are going to slow down, Grace, and make sure we do memorize those pieces that she said. Maybe you should write this down. Maybe you should say it out loud with me, but we need to memorize it. The first thing is, we're going to see this. We're going to jump right into some essays. Tommy and Mary agree to do tutoring services for $3,000 an hour, and boom, boom, boom. Immediately you recognize that there's a contract, right? So immediately you got to start compartmentalizing the things that you need to define to get points for. Remember how these essays are graded. They're graded on a rubric. Check marks, ding, ding, ding. You get a check mark every time you say something that's relevant and that sounds good. You don't get negative marks when you say something stupid. Now, you don't have time to say many stupid things because you're on a timer. So it's a delicate balance of saying everything you need to say to get the check marks, but not saying too much that you don't have enough time to say everything you need to say to get the check marks. So we got to focus on how do we get the check marks. Contracts from the top, very simply. Start from the way top. The first issue, right? Iraq. Does everyone know what Iraq stands for out there? It's a country. I actually have a digital graphic designer from Karbala, Iraq, but it also stands for, see, I told you these lectures are going to be super funny. I also stands for issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. I know that you might learn CREAC in law school, which is conclusion, rule, evidence, analysis, conclusion, perhaps, but I don't like that style. You know why? Because if you state the conclusion at the beginning and you're wrong, you kind of leave a bad taste in the reader's mouth. Like, wrong, you got the wrong conclusion, everything you're saying now is stupid. Like, so I'd rather go with Iraq. I'd rather go with Iraq, which is issue. The issue is whether there's a contract. The rule, a contract is a binding agreement between two parties in which there are adequate remedies at law. Fair enough. That's the rule. Analysis. Tommy said, let's do a contract. Maria said yes. Therefore, we likely have a contract. Now, that might be a little too much for that little issue, but that was just a way of approach to attack anything when you don't know how to write it fluently. When in doubt, write it out with an Iraq issue. The issue is this is the rule, this is the analysis, the conclusion. How should conclusions be written, in my opinion? Softly, therefore the court would likely find, you know what I'm saying? Because you don't know whether you're right or wrong. They're tricky. These are ambiguous issues. It's not like the MBE where it's black and white. Like, don't dig yourself a grave by picking the wrong answer and defending it to the death. Try to argue both sides. Tommy will argue that there was no contract because of this defense, something like that. But try to keep it delicate. We're going to go through model answers today. This is going to make more sense. Now, from the beginning, the first issue is whether there's a contract. The contract is a binding party between two parties in which there are adequate remedies at law. Sounds simple, but you're going to get a checkpoint for it. Next, we need to know, and if I'm going to speak right now in almost like basic level just to really simplify it. The next issue is whether the contract will be governed under the UCC or common law. That's the issue. The rule is, what's the rule, Grace?
Well, UCC is for products and merchants, and common law, it's the other stuff. For services.
And here's another definition we can get. Goods. Can anyone out there define what a good is? In I get a check mark for this language. What is a good?
It's like any movable item.
Nice. All things movable. Goods are all things movable. Literally, just that little checkpoint could be the difference between a passing score and a non-passing score. I want everyone to get in the habit of writing like that. Like the nerdiest nerd who's like, UCC governs goods. Goods are all things movable. Like every little point let's get, because we can't risk it. We can't risk it. We're writing this as if it's a 10th grader reading it. Like, not as if it's a law professor reading it, as if it's a 10th grader and you're trying to like spell out as basic as possible what everything is. Don't just say there's a contract between Tom and Jerry. The issue is whether it violated the statute of frauds. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? The first issue is whether there's a contract. The contract is an agreement between two parties in which there are valid remedies at law. The next issue is, and I'm saying in long language, the next issue is whether it be governed by the UCC or common law. The UCC governs goods. Goods are all things movable. Common law governs contracts for services and land. Fair enough? Okay. Then she talked about the predominant purpose test. We can spell that out again. That one I dislike because you can see I studied Shakespeare in undergrad. I was actually chasing after a girl who took Shakespeare, but whatever, I still studied it. And there's an art to the language. I don't like repeating the word in the definition. Like, that's why I don't like an offer is an offer. Like, that's weird to me. I still don't have a good word for the predominant purpose test because it always ends up being for whichever one predominates the contract. They literally use that in the language, like, is the major part of the contract. But you can reuse the word predominant. Whatever predominates the contract, they'll apply the predominant purpose test and apply that body of law. Now, they can also argue for divisibility of contract. Always think about that. Can this contract be divided? Would it be helpful? Would one side want this contract to be divided? So they could divide the contract if there's price terms, like the goods cost $50, the services cost $100. We can argue for divisibility of contract. Therefore, the goods will be governed under the UCC, the service will govern under common law. Just kind of some things to think about. So what is a contract? Is it UCC or common law? Consider the predominant purpose test. These are things I'm always just looking out for at the beginning. And I'm looking to use buzzwords. Buzzwords are my, like I said, we want to write these essays almost poetically, where we're just writing it concise enough that we have enough time to cover everything, but in that conciseness, using the buzzwords that are going to get us the check marks. So buzzwords at the beginning, contract, UCC, common law, predominant purpose test. Now I like to think about merchants, rules that apply to merchants. And even though maybe I skipped one, but the mirror image, right? And the mirror image test, the mirror image rule, which is for common law. Under the mirror image, the terms of the offer need to match the terms of the acceptance exactly, or else the acceptance is considered a counteroffer. These are all things Sam said. She crushed it with this. So that's the mirror image rule. Now, if they're merchants under the UCC, it's actually going to be the battle of the forms provision. And there's going to be a stipulation, and we talked about this, that an additional term in an acceptance, if it does not materially alter the nature of the contract, will be part of the contract and will not constitute a counteroffer. So that's one thing that's going to apply to merchants, is that additional terms test. We also thought about instances and just kind of getting this down on our paper or outlined somewhere when it comes to a contract's outline, that merchants are not going to need consideration for a modification. So we think about at the beginning, are they merchants? How do we identify if they're merchants? Look out for that. Everything they say in the essay is a layup opportunity to get a point for. If they say Tom, the artist, and Jerry, the musician, they're saying those words for a reason. Since Tom is an artist, this makes him a merchant, because a merchant is someone who deals with the goods of that kind or something of that nature. So these are points we can get at the beginning. Mirror image, predominant purpose, identifying if they're merchants, UCC versus common law, what is a contract? That's a lot of points you can get right at the beginning, right? Okay. Then we get into the thing that everyone loves about contracts. It's like how they want to start. But if they just start with this, you miss 5 or 6 points at the beginning, which is the offer, acceptance, consideration, no valid defenses. So who out there, not named Sam, can kind of give me their memorized, concise definition, or not concise, however long you want to put it, of offer, acceptance, and consideration in Florida? Who feels confident here? What are you going to write on test day? An offer is what?
So for an offer is a manifestation of an intent to be bound, that creates power of acceptance in the offeree. The acceptance, I'm sure there's probably a little more I can add to the offer.
That's good. I like that.
That's good. Acceptance is, I'm blanking out a little bit on the exact terms I want to use, but an acceptance is an assent to the, it is like an assent to the terms of the offer, and it requires mutual assent. Consideration, I have a more solid definition, but
offer and acceptance are hard. They're hard terms to like write down because they're so basic and they end up repeating yourself. Like a manifestation, the intent to be bound by the terms, that can reasonably be construed to, these are kind of words to use. So intent to be bound, mutual assent, and I like the word meeting of the minds. There must be a meeting of the minds. Those are just keywords. The more you write it out, flesh it out, the more solid it'll become. Does anyone else want to take a crack at it and say what their terminologies, and you can write off your paper of what offer and acceptance is, how you're going to write it out on test day?
Can I say something real quick?
Of course.
I remember like my first session with Andrew, because I took the bar a bunch of times, but last time was the first time that I worked with Andrew. And he was asking me questions off the back, and I was like, oh shoot, I don't know. This man is crazy. But I promise you, you will know this stuff like the back of your hand. Like you will, believe me. Don't be scared. Don't be worried. Like he will drill it into your head. What Roberta said was so true. Like the assistance you're gonna get is amazing. So don't be afraid.
What is an offer and acceptance on test day? What are you going to write in your exact language?
Me?
You, Sam.
Okay. So offer is an manifestation. Okay. An offer is a manifestation of intent to enter into a contract. The offerer is the master of the offer and puts power into the offeree, gives power of acceptance to the offeree. Acceptance is the manifestation of intent to agree to the terms of the contract. consideration is a bargain for exchange in Florida. It can also be a legal detriment.
Exactly. A bargain for exchange of legal detriment or benefit in Florida. Nice. Okay, that was pretty solid. Offer, acceptance, consideration. An offer gives power of acceptance, and acceptance is a manifestation of intent to be bound by the terms in a way that the offerer would understand to constitute acceptance. Acceptance could be in the form of conduct, things of that nature. Remember, key terms, buzzwords. Try to use mutual assent, intent to be bound, and meeting of the minds. And then consideration. Joel, what were you going to say is your definition of consideration in Florida?
I was going to say pretty much the same thing, that in Florida, consideration requires a bargain for exchange that can be evidenced by a detriment or a benefit or the detriment to either party. Florida goes by the detriment benefit theory. So essentially that.
Yeah, bargain for exchange of legal detriment or benefit in Florida. And try to say in Florida as much as possible if you can, because why? Because they're trying to filter out people from Wyoming who are moving to Florida and taking this test and know the Wyoming law, and they want to make sure you know the Florida law. When we get to con law, we're going to stress homestead exemption, sunshine law, stand your ground law, things that are really Florida specific. So if you can ever, and it's just kind of, it goes with my whole theory of like, be a nerd, like in Florida, legal detriment or benefit. So good. Offer, acceptance, consideration with definite terms. So from the top, what is a contract? It's a agreement between two parties in which there are adequate remedies at law. UCC versus common law. Think about the mirror image rule. Think about predominant purpose test. See if they're merchants. Even consider bow the forms provision. Then talk about offer, acceptance, consideration. Make sure you really flesh those out. Those are the easiest points to get on a contracts essay, but I can't stress enough that you need to practice writing them out, right? Grace, I'm speaking right to you. You need to practice writing them out in your own language so that on test day, that part takes 3 minutes and you can focus on like, all right, now what are they saying in paragraph 2? Because that is wild. You know what I mean? Like
quick question.
Yeah, sure.
When you say memorize it in my own language, yeah. I thought that would not gain, I wouldn't gain points if I use like a synonym of a buzzword, like okay. I don't know if they want specific.
Fair enough. When I say your own language, like we're going to give you models, our model answers. You might have a model answer. That's your own language. Like copy that exact word for word.
Okay.
Language is not like don't use like poetic justice license. Like your own language that you feel comfortable. That's easiest for you to memorize. There's a few different ways to say what an offer is. Pick one and memorize it word for word. Don't pick one from your own brain though. Pick one that's like written out for you in an official study guide. Our guide, one of the guides you have. So good question. Memorize it. And I'm going to give us everyone at the end for homework today. Well, for this week, it's a sheet that basically has all these questions like what is an offer? And then you type in boom, boom, boom. That's going to be your language. Whatever you type in for that answer, I'll go over it and edit it and make sure that it's not trash. But as long as it's solid, that's what you memorize. We got to make this fast, memorized, easy to regurgitate. It's all regurgitation. The hardest part is like seeing the weird issues and knowing some of the weird parts of the law. Like they're going to trick you on that. We're going to do our best. And, I can prepare you for that as best as possible, but it's like, if you get hit with something that we've never seen before, you're on your own, that's battle. You got to figure it out. What I can do is prepare you for the things that we've seen before over and over and make sure that you know exactly how to react as quickly as possible. The first thing is recognizing a contract. identifying who the parties are, if they're merchants, seeing if it is a contract, if it's UCC or common law, what are going to be the formalities that apply to the governing body of law, offer acceptance consideration, making sure we have good definitions of all of these. And then we get into the next piece, valid defenses, right? What are valid defenses to contract formation? We gotta always start with the statute of frauds. That's gonna happen all the time. Is the contract in writing? They make it kind of clear, like said on the phone, talk to, is the contract in writing? So the first defense that X may raise is that the contract does not conform with the statute of frauds. Under the statute of frauds, there are certain contracts that must be evidenced in writing and signed by the party to be charged. These contracts include my legs. Now, you might think you're slick and be like, this is a contract for land, therefore it has to be in writing, period. Okay, you didn't get all the points that you just needed to get by explaining where that conclusion comes from. I want everyone to hone in on that skill. Like, we're not just giving people the C is the answer, circling it in. That's the MBE. That's the multiple choice section. Here, we're talking about how to write a contracts essay. And the way to write a contracts essay is like starting with an umbrella overview. Like, you got to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about and kind of funnel down to the answer. Don't just say, this is a contract for land, therefore it has to be in writing. It wasn't in writing, so it's not valid. Like, okay, cool, 3 points, failure, right? You got to go through the whole analysis of what is a contract, UCC versus common law, offer acceptance consideration, no valid defenses. First offense is the statute of frauds. What is the statute of frauds? Evidenced in writing and signed by the party to be charged. What contracts must conform with the statute of frauds? Marriage, contracts that cannot be completed within 1 year. We talked about that stipulation yesterday, that if it can be completed within 1 year, I want everyone to know that. If I offer you tutoring services for life, that does not need to be in writing because I could die tomorrow. I'm very keen on that. That's why I try to teach really good every class. It could be my last session. So, you have to have contracts that cannot be completed in 1 year. I also talk about the rent stipulation that, like, if it's an 11-month contract, but it starts in 3 months, it's still under 1 year because it's not when we agreed on the contract, it's the actual contract itself. So can someone out there remind me of what are some exceptions to the statute of frauds or ways that the statute of frauds can be overcome?
I think, I'm not remembering the exact rule, but I think it had something to do with an oral agreement where performance has already begun.
I was just going to say the word I'm looking for is performance, right? Like, if I already did it and now you're trying to say, oh, well, it didn't conform with the statute of frauds. Like, I already did it, like the performance has begun. If it's been substantial, right, then that would overcome the statute of frauds defense. So we're definitely looking for that as a mechanism of overcoming statute of frauds. That's pretty much the main one I was thinking of. So statute of frauds, my legs, marriage, contracts not completed over 1 year, contracts for land. What else is necessary for a contract for land? Anyone?
A specific description of the land to be dealt.
Yeah, adequate description of the property. Sure. And look, I'm going to tell you all, we're not doing real estate yet, but Joe is probably something you'll be great at. Well, hopefully. Real estate is the hardest essay subject because it kind of incorporates everything. It incorporates common law in the sense of like a variance or an amortization, some other things. It incorporates contract law. Like, at the end of the day, real estate is contract law. Like that, I know. And one of the hardest areas is this kind of overlap of real estate and contract law. I'm just kind of forecasting this for people if you want to start studying ahead and learning things. Deeds, mortgages, titles, things like that, how those contracts operate. And we're going to look at when we do essays, we're going to look at mortgages. And then even later, we're going to look at secured transactions. And those kind of operate in the same way, which they're like basically just two contracts on top of each other. So that's why I start with contracts. I think it's a foundation for some other subjects, for real estate, for family law, for things that are just based on contracts. But the land one, definitely want to know how contracts for land operate, not just for statute of frauds purposes, but also because you're going to be dealing with that in the real property section. So, okay, we have marriage contracts for 1 year, land, executorships, goods over $500, and suretyships. Can someone explain to me what's an executorship again?
Like an executor of a will?
Right, someone who is an executor will. Now, this is something that I just kind of reminded myself of yesterday as I was teaching. You know, always clarifying things in my own head. But executorship and executory are different contracts. Does everyone know that?
No, I didn't know that. I thought it was the same thing.
And that's confusing, right? An executory contract refers to like a contract of adhesion, or a contract that's like where one party has, you know, a position of power over the other. That's an executory.
Adhesion, what did you say? That an executory contract is like a contract of adhesion?
Has anyone ever heard of that term? We actually mentioned it yesterday, contract of adhesion.
Yeah, I that always stuck in my mind. I remember from law school. That's the example I learned was that someone owned the land and someone else built on the land, and yeah, I think something like that. Sorry.
No, let's clarify this all right now, because when we're talking about the statute of frauds and we're talking about that we're talking about executorships in the term of what Ben was saying, like a guardian or someone who takes over for someone when they're lack capacity. But then if you guys all have your Google machines right now, I just literally typed this into Google, not afraid to admit it, executory contract, that says something, generally a contract, that has not yet been fully performed or completed and is therefore considered imperfect or unassured until its full execution. Anything executory is started, not yet finished, or is in the process of being completed in order to take full effect at a future time. So that's kind of just being delicate with the language. We're talking about not executory contracts, we're talking about executorships. And then the other thing that I just typed in just to verify was a contract of adhesion. And when they talk about a contract of adhesion, they're saying parties are at such disproportionate bargaining power that the party of weaker bargaining strength could not have reasonably created the contract. So just wanted to clarify, always learning, but I've been confused about that in the past, about an executorship versus an executory contract. And then also, what is a contract of adhesion? Okay, so but when we're talking about the lens of statute of frauds, executorship, and that should be in writing, right? It needs to be in writing. Who's gonna decide where I want to live when I'm incapacitated? Should be something in writing. All right, so goods over $500. Be careful; they'll talk about a $480 thing. And then suretyships. Who can define a suretyship for me? We talked about this yesterday too. I'm just like rocking with the Google machine to make sure we're precise.
That surety is when someone else agrees to pay the debt of another.
Yeah, a legally binding agreement that the signee will accept responsibility for another's individual contractual obligations, usually the payment of a loan if the principal borrower falls behind or defaults. Fair enough. So we understand statute of frauds, my legs. Getting back to the essay structure, and I'm telling you all this because any Florida contracts essay, you got to begin with the memorized structure. What is a contract? UCC versus common law. What are those elements that affect body of law? Offer, acceptance, consideration. No valid defenses. First defense is statute of frauds. Statute of frauds is my legs. Marriage, land, contracts under 1 year, executorships, goods over $500, and suretyships. We all got to feel confident with that. Do we all feel confident with that? Grace?
With my legs?
Just like that whole speech. What is a contract?
I need to practice it.
Image.
I can see myself being confident about it in the future.
Exactly.
Okay, I don't like that answer. Why? What's wrong? What, like, you just need to practice that in the mirror?
Probably.
Fair enough, and go do it. Like, you know what I'm saying? But we gotta, let's just take on this attitude that we're performing soon. Let's stop thinking about it like, oh, the test is coming up. Like my friend Shelby, I don't want to say, but she's not here today, and I want her to be here today. She's amazing. Only good things to say about her. But I want everyone to be here. I want people to realize, like, the test is coming up soon. To be fair, she's not taking it for a whole nother year. But I'm being hard on everyone because, like, we got to know this stuff. So I want everyone to. That's like assignment number 1 is get in front of the mirror or get on a piece of paper. Honestly, it's best on a piece of paper because that's how you're going to do it on test day, right? I do think that speaking out loud and writing, that works for me, but it can't just be like in your head and thinking like, oh yeah, I think I know it. We need to check these off and be like, okay, I'm getting all those points fluidly. That part is easy. What is a contract? A binding agreement between two or more parties in which there are valid remedies at law. UCC, goods are all things movable. Common law is for services and land. There's the mirror image test for common law, which means the offer has to match the acceptance. Under the UCC, if they're merchants, an additional term will be considered part of the contract unless it materially alters the contract. Offer is a manifestation of intent to be bound by terms in a manner in which the acceptor would recognize as an offer, right? You could fumble it a little bit and still get through it. You just got to push through it. An acceptance is a intent to be bound by the terms of the offer. There must be a meeting of the minds and mutual assent of both parties. You see, I kind of saved myself with my buzzwords. Okay. There must also be consideration. Consideration is a bargain for exchange of legal detriment or value or benefit in Florida. The next issue is whether, and then, you got to go into your analysis here. There was an offer when Tommy said, I want there to be this. There was likely an acceptance when Johnny said, like, trust me, there's going to be a contract. You're not going to be like, there was no contract. There was no offer and acceptance. Therefore, this essay is over. Probably not going to happen, but it's just getting through this part with getting as many points as possible. So we got to have that whole thing memorized in a nutshell. And I say that because it's like, you're going to get down to the nitty gritty and it's going to be hard. So you got to make the easy part easy. That's the key to this test. Like, make the easy stuff easy so that the hard stuff you have time to like think about and like kind of bullshit your way through a little bit. Like a little bit. You can't bullshit your way through this. This is real black letter law. You can bullshit your way a little bit through like whether Tommy, materially breached the contract by not serving enough ice cream balls. Like that's a little bit of leeway, but this part needs to be cold. Okay. So offer, acceptance, consideration, no valid defenses. The first valid defense is statute of fraud. Statute of fraud is my legs. Ben said you already memorized that, so I feel good about that. All right, cool. Make sure we know that. Check that off. That's assignment number 1, right? Okay. Now, assignment number 1 was actually getting to defenses. Assignment number 2 is knowing all the defenses. 2.A was statute of frauds. 2.B is mistake, right? I said this yesterday. This should be sounding repetitive. Repetition is good. Now, imagine how repetitive it is for me. I've been doing this for 5 years. Now, what is the difference between a mutual and a unilateral mistake? And what's the difference in the effect of that?
Mutual is when both parties are mistaken. Unilateral is usually when one party is mistaken. When both parties are mistaken, then the contract is voidable. When one party is mistaken, the contract is voidable by the non-mistaken party if they didn't know, like if they knew the other party was, if they didn't know that the other party, if they, it's so much easier to write.
Sam, you're killing it. Keep pushing forward. This is going to be your administration because you're literally breaking through. A difference between a mutual mistake and a unilateral mistake is that a unilateral mistake, the mistaken party bears the responsibility of that mistake, unless the other party knew of the mistake and should have told the mistaken party about the mistake and essentially took advantage of them, right? Because that's going to get to the element of good faith. But if it was just like a trivial mistake that one party, mistook, then sucks for them. That's how it goes. Like, we can't just be correcting everyone's little mistakes, but if it's something that the other party, like, oh shoot, they think it's this, it's really that, then we're gonna make it voidable. Now, voidable, not void. The mistaken party could realize, oh, that mistake plays in my favor. You jackass, you should have told me, but now, it's gonna play out. Like, same thing with if they're underage or something, it's voidable. If it's a mutual mistake, then we're really talking about there being no meeting of the minds. The underlying substance, I forget exactly what language they used yesterday, but some good language. The basic assumptions of the contract are not met. There's no essential, the contract is bullshit, right? If it's a mutual mistake, it's voidable by both parties. We can rescind the contract. Unilateral, one party has to bear it unless they can prove that the other party, should have told them about it. They knew about it and should have told them. Fair enough. Look for that a lot for mutual mistake, unilateral mistake. Okay. What are some other defenses? Now we get to the point where we're going to do this with every single subject. We got to become like, I pull strings out of people and they can just rattle stuff off for me. The main defenses to contract formation, in my opinion, statute of frauds, always. You guys are becoming lawyers. I can sum up your advice to all your clients in one statement. Get it in writing, right? Like, literally charge someone on whatever amount of money, but here's my advice. Get it in writing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's literally like law school in a nutshell. They charge you $100,000 in 3 years to teach you nothing. I could teach you that in one sentence. Get it in writing, statute of frauds. Now, what is a next offense? Mistake, right? Like, dude, this isn't what I thought the contract was supposed to be. Mutual, unilateral mistake. Let's get those two really down pat. I think someone might be joining the class, but I don't know how to see participants. Oh yeah, someone may have got kicked out and or is here twice. All good. Okay. Anywho.
Quick question.
Sure.
I found some index cards I wrote at the beginning. So I have here that for the defenses for contract and sales. I have mistake, but I also have another one that is ambiguity and misunderstanding. Is that the same?
Yeah, but those are almost like subheadings under mistake. They're types of mistake.
Okay.
Makes sense though, right? An ambiguity or misunderstanding. Ambiguity meaning there's something vague or unclear, and then a misunderstanding meaning one party reasonably understood the terms to mean something different than they did. That'll always get back to the meeting of the minds aspect. Ask yourself that. Is, no contract can exist if the two parties weren't on the same page, right? Okay, so get it in writing. Don't make any mistakes. Have a meeting of the minds. Now, what are some other defenses we could talk about?
Unconscionable.
Unconscionable. Okay, and what do we mean by a contract that's unconscionable?
That's I don't have like a specific definition, but I know it's something like a contract that no one would ever agree to. Like that's crazy, out of your mind.
Yeah,
But I know I cannot write that down on the test.
bargaining power or unfair terms. Unfair is the key word right there. Unconscionable is unfair. Just
Okay.
unfair. Okay, it's an unconscionable contract. Like, come on, you were gonna sell my house for some beans. Like that's unconscionable, you know?
Mhm.
Okay, Kemas, what else besides unconscionable? And the reason why is because remember how I told you to write these essays? Stephen, the question will be like, does Stephen have any defenses? I like to give them the whole outline. There are many defenses available in contract law, including, watch me write them all, you know, bing, 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 bing. And then I'll be like, these are the ones that are most applicable here. These are their definitions, you know, depending on how much time you have. But like, don't risk it. Try to like give them the whole spread. Like, these are all the defenses to contract formation. These are all the definitions. These are the ones that apply here. That's the best way. Again, you don't have time maybe, so maybe you don't have time to define the ones that really don't apply at all. But unconscionability is a good one. There's a lot.
What about, sorry. What about duress?
Duress. Good one.
How would you give me another word that I can remember?
Threats. Under threat.
Oh, threats. Okay.
Gun to your head.
Okay.
Without sound mind. Okay, so duress. What else comes with duress? Oh, you know what is a good word? Undue influence. Duress, we're going to use undue influence.
I was just gonna say undue influence.
Yeah. False imprisonment, threats, force, psychological pressure, or coercion to influence someone to act in a way that's not in their best interest or in a manner they do not wish to act. Okay, so duress, that was a good one. So far, you know, just keep this list and make sure we touch every basis here. We're going to go into essays in the second half of class, don't worry. But for now, we talked about unconscionability, which was going to be unfair terms or bargaining power. And then we just talked about duress, which we're going to say undue influence, threats, coercion, fraud, things of that nature. So with that kind of duress, fraud, misrepresentation, those are good ones to think about. What's the difference between fraud and misrepresentation? Anyone know, really?
I want to say misrepresentation is purposely trying to convince somebody that, like, they know what the person wants, and then they go and they try to convince them that this is what they're getting, even though they know they're not. Where fraud is more so like doing something that's probably, I don't want to say, I guess illegal, but more so like something that's not, I don't want to say not right, but when with misrepresentation, it's like intentionally changing the terms of the contract to conform to what the person needs and trying to trick them in that way.
Fraud is more tricky, I think. Like, fraud is deceiving someone into entering into the contract. Whereas misrepresentation is misstating the terms or a misstatement. A misstatement, like saying that this house is a great beach view and it has a view of a stone wall, right? That's a misrepresentation. Fraud would be like, hey, sign this contract and you're going to get a Mercedes, but really they're signing a contract to sell the house. That's fraud, right? It's it's the act. Fraud is more of an act and misrepresentation is more of a misstatement. Grace, you're on mute.
I noticed. What about, is it fraud that a person is making, like, pretending to be someone else? Is that fraud or misrepresentation?
Fraud. If you're like
Oh, fraud.
an act, if you're doing a misdoubtfire, that's fraud. If you
Okay.
misstating something about the terms of the contract, that's misrepresentation. So we have fraud, we have misrepresentation, we have duress. Excellent. What other defenses to formation do we have?
Lack of capacity.
Okay, incapacity. I like that. Give me some examples of incapacity. Who's incapacitated?
Well, minor and
A minor. So
Someone with dementia.
dementia, mental illness,
and someone drunk too, right?
drunk, definitely drunk people. Now, remember the drunk person can sober up and then ratify a contract. The underage person can become of age and ratify a contract. So we want to think of ratification there. It's also voidable, right? It's voidable. It's not void. It's voidable if they're talking about incapacity. Okay. What other? So that's why I say the I's. I think about a lot of I's. Incapacity is one that starts with an I. Any other ones that start with I we can think of?
Impossibility,
Impossibility. Now I'm going to
impracticability.
challenge you. What's the difference between impossibility and impracticability?
Impossible means it can't happen. Like if I make a contract to do something at a concert and the concert gets canceled, it's impossible. I can't do the contract. But if the contract got moved 10 hours away, then maybe they have an argument for impracticability because it would be impractical for them to have to drive and do all of that to fulfill the contract.
We see in contract law, they're very keen on like these terms and the definiteness of it. Like can't be completed in 1 year. Well, I could die within a year, like impossible. It's not impossible. You could technically do it. Like that's kind of the vibes they have in contract law, like sneaky little things. Like, so let's talk about that. Frustration of purpose, we think of, that's impossibility and impracticality, frustration of purpose. Illegality, a supervening illegality, like it actually becomes illegal. That would render it void. You can't do it if it's illegal. We talked about if someone dies, that typically will free their obligation under the contract. I said there were some things that survive. We'll talk about that more in different subjects and probably torts, but I'm talking about, survivorship claims maybe, or estates, things of that nature. But as far as contracts are concerned, if one party dies, then that's gonna end any obligation under the contract for both parties. Okay, so defenses: impossibility, impracticality, duress, fraud, misrepresentation, intoxication, incapacity, underage. Anything else? Anything else?
I'm not sure if it's a defense to the statute of frauds or just to the contract formation as a whole, but promissory estoppel is where I'm thinking.
I would think of that more in defense. I mean, not defense, and the remedies. Promissory estoppel meaning there'll be a stop from not enforcing, participating in the contract. That's a good one, but I think that would be more of a remedy, a promissory estoppel. I think we got them all right here. The main defense is unilateral mutual mistake, misrepresentation and fraud, duress and undue influence, unconscionability, lack of consent, impossibility and practicality, frustration of purpose, and statute of frauds. Pretty solid, right? Definitely try to have at least those memorized. Unilateral mutual mistake, misrepresentation and fraud, duress and undue influence, unconscionability, lack of consent, impossibility and practicality, frustration of purpose, statute of frauds. Added in there, intervening illegality. Pretty solid. Okay, take a step back. Someone asked the question: is frustration of purpose? I think of good question. I think impossibility and impracticality are under the doctrine of frustration of purpose. Can you add my phone? I had to take my dog out. I think I already did that. I'm sorry, I'm just reading the side chat. Okay, yes. Under the doctrine of frustration of purpose comes impossibility and practicality. Now, look, there is some leeway in all of this, right? These are just canons of law that we're discussing. So, you can, I'll say that someone, professor, might disagree with me, but that's my interpretation of it. Okay. So taking a step back, what time is it? 12:17? Taking a step back, we're going to do this on every single contracts essay. I'm going to show you this. We're going to do, what is a contract? How does it start out? UCC versus common law. Let's get all the points up top about if they're merchants, if it's a mirror image, if it's battle of the forms. We should have even talked about perfect tender up there somewhere, the widgets, modifications, things of that nature. Offer, acceptance, consideration, no valid defenses, statute of frauds, my legs, and then get into all 7 of those things I just said: unilateral mutual mistake, misrepresentation of fraud, duress and undue influence, unconscionability, lack of consent, impossibility and practicality, frustration and purpose, statute of frauds. Do you think you guys can do that? Like, do you think you know all those things pretty well and you can talk about them pretty well?
We will all be well. Don't worry about it. We've
Yeah.
learned this 100 times. That's what I had to realize. Like, we really did learn this 100 times. Whether you put in your own words and have your own voice to it in your head, we've done it 100 times. We got this.
A lot of people haven't done 100 times yet. For a lot of people, it's their first or second time. So I just found this site that I just shared on the chat where they talk about some things, and they kind of do differentiate between frustration of purpose and impossibility and illegality. But like, as I'm looking at it, they still are like pretty much the same. So I don't even want to get into it too much. Remember, you get the points just for mentioning things, keywords, talking about things, but we can definitely read further into that. So going through the outline that we're all going to have memorized in this first half of class, because the second half of class, we're going to go through the model answers and see, wow, Andrew was really onto something, right? We have that memorized. Please, try to think of the Florida essays like you're going to be in a play. You're going to be forced to say your part. You got to have your part memorized word for word and be ready to say it. That's half the battle. The other half is going to be the issue spotting. We're going to work a lot on issue spotting in this course. But before we can do issue spotting, you got to learn the rules. Right, Rosie? So we get to the point of offer, acceptance, consideration, no valid defenses, talk through all the valid defenses. Then, has there been a breach? Has a breach occurred? Material versus immaterial breach. Kind of talk about differences between them, and a material breach will render it, the difference between a material breach and an immaterial breach is that a material breach affects the underlying essence of the contract, something like that. Again, X is going to argue that a material breach occurred here. Y is going to defend that this wasn't a breach, this was contemplated, this was foreseeable, things of that nature. So I just say that because try to get a point or two there in just mentioning what a breach is and that breach occurred and differentiating between a material and an immaterial breach. So going through the outline, offer, acceptance, consideration, no valid defenses, breach. Finally, we get to remedies section. And I think of remedies as the easiest place to get points, and one of the places where a lot of people don't get points. Why is that? Because as you're going through the essay and trying to, X will argue that a breach occurred here, X will argue this is an offer. Oh my God, my outline, I got to also talk about some weird issue. They run out of time. And when they run out of time, they don't have time to do a thorough damages analysis. So we got to get good at damages. I almost recommend it. I do recommend if it works for you. Everything different for everybody. maybe even doing damages first, at least getting this sentence down on the paper about what are the different types of damages and what's available. At least get them on paper. So does someone want to take a crack at it, not named Samantha, who's been killing it so far, or Grace, who's been also killing it so far, or Joelle, who's been also killing it so far? Does someone want to take a crack at what are the different types of remedies available in contract law? Anyone feel confident? Rosie, come here.
Well, restitution, right? Damages,
Yeah, restitution for sure.
which is the one that puts the person in the same position
Let's start a
it
little
would
higher.
have been.
Let's always start higher. What are the two types of remedies available for contract law? Basically, you're either getting money in your pocket or the court's telling someone to do something, right? Rosie, come here. My dogs know everything about the law. They listen to so many lectures.
So that's specific performance.
Yeah, but let's even go higher up.
So you get monetary damages or equitable remedies or
Right.
damage.
Okay.
Legal relief is going to be monetary damages, and equitable relief is going to be court ordered. Injunctions, specific performance, things like that. On the legal relief side, monetary side, what's the main type of relief available? Main type of damage available?
Nominal damages.
I would not say
Expectation damage.
expectation first. Nominal damages is the worst kind of damages to ever get as a plaintiff.
But does that answer the question? Like that's the, I mean, that's the less that you'll get, but I thought like you always get nominal damages. Like should I mention it always in damages?
Yeah, nominal damages are insignificant, but they should be mentioned. But I wouldn't recommend starting with nominal damages. I recommend starting at the top. There are two types of damages available. Just like I said, if it should be UCC versus common law, we're going to go into, the next issue is what type of damages are available to Tommy. In contract law, there are damages are split into two types: legal, in parentheses, monetary damages, and equitable damages. The main type, or the primary type of monetary relief, is expectation damages. Expectation damages are given to the non-breaching party to put them in the position they would have been had the contract been performed. Right? Expectation damage is numero uno. Then expectation damages are going to lead to consequential damages. Consequential damages are damages that were foreseeable at the time the contract was created in the event of a breach. From consequential damages, we're going to go to incidental damages. Incidental damages are damages that are incurred as a result of the breach, like of remedying the breach. So expectation to be made whole again, consequential, foreseeable, incidental, recovering from the breach. Those are the main types of expectation of monetary damages. Now, it gets kind of confusing because we hear this word compensatory damages too. These are considered compensatory damages as well. If we're going to kind of think about that super umbrella thing, I would say monetary damages / legal relief, compensatory, expectation. Expectation is a type of compensatory damage. Now, in contract law, you really only get compensatory damages. Punitive damages are like not really available in contract law unless it's like, I don't know, you make a contract to like be Adolf Hitler or something. I don't know. It's got to be really, really, really bad for punitive damages. It's going to be compensatory damages. Main type of compensatory damage, expectation, then consequential, then incidental. Yes, then nominal. We're going to mention nominal. Nominal damages are good. If I ever sue someone, I want nominal damages. Like I want it to be known that they're a sucker, they're a buster. Like that's what a nominal damage is. It's like a statement from the court, like Tommy is a known buster, and he has to wear the buster hat for the rest of the week. Like, no, not even he has to wear the hat. That would be punitive. Just that he is a known buster. That's nominal damage in name only. We can argue for lost wages, lost profits, liquidated damages if it's stipulated in the contract. Remembering that liquidated damages are contracts that are damages that are contemplated when the contract is written. They have to be reasonable. They're disfavored in Florida. I think they're limited to 10%, but someone could catch me on that. Okay, any other type of monetary relief available in contract law? Am I missing anything? Lost wages, lost profits, nominal. Those are kind of the things you don't think about. The main ones that you got to hit on test day are expectation, consequential, incidental. Okay, then on the other side, we're going to have equitable relief. We're going to have legal relief, and then we're going to have equitable relief. Equitable relief is going to be court ordered. The main one I think of is specific performance. Specific performance is necessary, fine art, land. All pieces of land are unique. We're going to think about that for specific performance. We could have injunctive relief. Injunctive relief could be a TRO, temporary restraining order, or it could be like a full-on injunction. Now, again, for contract law, that's probably rarer to see, but just thinking about how we understand damages, injunction is a type of, or a DEC Act, a declaratory judgment, that is going to be an equitable type of relief. So we're going to have more contract-related equitable relief. I think of R's. In contracts, I think of I's for defenses to contract, and I think of R's for equitable relief. Reformation, we're going to reform the contract to make it right. Rescission, we're going to totally rescind the contract. So reformation versus rescission. Reformation is reforming the contract. Rescission is like totally rescinding the contract. We even talk about replevin. We mentioned replevin is the idea of recovering stolen or wrongly acquired possessions. So reformation, rescission. Now, you talked about restitution as the main one. That is a big one. I think the biggest ones are expectation damages, which is purely monetary. Specific performance, which is purely equitable. And then I think of restitution kind of in the middle. I don't really know how to classify it, but we'll talk about it. Restitution is when one party has been conferred a benefit and therefore they need to pay for it, right? We're going to take money away from them usually. So thinking, that's restitution, big one. So reformation, restitution, rescission, replevin. I told you, there's a lot of R's I start thinking about. We also want to talk about the concept of promissory estoppel, unjust enrichment. Those are things that arise in these contract situations where, one party has already received the benefit and therefore they will be stopped from not enforcing the contract, or it would be unjust for them not to enforce the contract. That's going to be promissory estoppel. Always considering that concept of unjust enrichment, whether it's in promissory estoppel or whether it's in restitution. And then remember this concept of quasi-contract. A quasi-contract, and we're getting right to that break time because my boy is crying on me. A quasi-contract is basically there was no contract in the first place, but the court is going to enforce a contract because it would be unjust not to have one. So it's like, a fictitious contract, one that's just made up by the court in the matter of justice. So, and Biscuit, he knows the contract really, really well. He's heard this a million times. When we're talking about a contract essay in the second half of class is what we're going to do. We're just going to look at a bunch of model answers. We're going to see that there is a super outline. The outline, what is the contract, UCC versus common law, all those buzzwords at the top that I mentioned, offer, acceptance, consideration, no valid defenses, statute of frauds, all those other defenses. Is there a breach? Is it material? Is it immaterial? And all the damages. That's the key backbone outline to any contracts essay. Now, I did mention there's like 5 things that we also want to talk about in Florida essays that I see a lot from my experience. Number 1, anticipatory repudiation. When there's anticipatory repudiation, we got to understand that there's going to be a request for further assurances. You know, if they're merchants, they got 30 days, and then they could either sue then or wait till the contract, wait till the breach actually occurs. So we'll talk about this. Don't get overwhelmed. Anticipatory repudiation. Talk about the parole evidence rule. Remember, parole evidence, usually we're not going to allow extraneous agreements to contradict the fully integrated contract. However, there's a lot of exceptions. If it's to clarify an ambiguous term, if it's to show some defect in formation, like a mistake or a misunderstanding or duress or something like that, those are going to be some of the major exceptions to the parole evidence rule. Anticipatory repudiation, parole evidence. I kind of already talked about liquidated damages clauses. I've seen that come up a couple of times. Just know that they're disfavored in Florida, but if it's going to be too difficult to contemplate damages at the time, a lot of times we'll see this in construction contracts, a liquidated damages clause is cool. We're going to be cool with that. Non-competes, you know, employment contracts, they got to be reasonable in geographic scope, like the area. They got to be reasonable in duration, how much time. I think 6 months, anything under 6 months is considered reasonable. After that, you know, it's a little bit case by case. And then I've seen them test this, so I'm not bringing this out of nowhere, but with like patents, trademarks, I don't want to misquote it, but it's like 3 years maybe. Like let's lock in on that kind of detail. It's in my outlines, trust me. I'm a little rusty on some of this stuff. Don't be mad at me. So parole evidence, anticipatory repudiation, non-competes, liquidated damages, installment contracts. Talked about installment contracts yesterday. They try and trick you. Like, remember, if they don't have perfect tender, and I don't think I talked about perfect tender enough today, but remember perfect tender, UCC, 30 red widgets. It's got to be 30 red widgets. But if it's an installment-based contract, they're going to have an opportunity to cure if they only send 25 widgets in May, and they've been doing it, you know, for these many days. Opportunity to cure. We're going to remember that with the installment contract. Anticipatory repudiation, parole evidence, installment contracts, liquidated damages, non-competes. That's my little 5, you know, areas that I see pop up in addition to the main structure that I told you of an essay. If you can just be confident in all of that, that's pretty solid. Now, there's always going to be deeper things. Like, we're going to uncover some things today. And it's just like I said with the questions. You can't really uncover what else until you get looking at some of the essays. Now, what we've done as a company over the years is pretty awesome. We've gone through basically every essay that's ever been written, and we've outlined it, just teased out the main rules of law, which is the best thing for you. You know, you can go over our outlines and memorize them. We're going to go over some of them today. And we're going to look at some of the model answers, and we're going to look at some of the hypos. That's going to occur after this commercial break. So, oh shit, I dropped my phone. Yeah, why don't we come back at 12:45, and we'll actually jump right into like some model essays and such. But how'd you guys think of the lectures? Pretty awesome? Cool. All right, I'll see you at 12:45, and we'll look at model essays. It'll be a lot of fun.